Welcome to the Dork Forest. Jackie and her pals will never bore us. Shameless confessions
about our obsession
will make us laugh and smile. So let's explore the Dork Forest and dork out for a while.
Hello and welcome to the Dork Forest. It's Jackie Cation. It's December. Remember, December means that you should be donating to some local food bank or just helping folk out. You don't need to donate to the Dork Forest this month. You could do both if you want. You can go to the JackieCation.com and use the Amazon banner if you're ordering something for some sort of holiday. There's an Amazon banner where we all order from Amazon. And you can order merch from JackieCation.com. I happen to have in stock at least one of each size of the hooded sweatshirt for some reason. Then we have Dork Forest t-shirts and Ranger t-shirts and CDs, of course. This month I am going to be recording my new CD and DVD in Minneapolis at the Acme Comedy Company, December 26th, 27th, and 28th. And you can come to that if you so desire. The credits, let's just do them. Mike Rickberg sang that song you heard. He composed it, and he sang it with Sarah Cohen. He's going to sing the Mexican hat dance at the end. Patrick will fix this audio, Patrick Brady. He also does the teaser clips on the YouTube page, youtube.com/thedorkforest. And Vilmos, he fixes the website. So there's apps, there's merch, there's all kinds of exciting things happening. And it's December, so I hope that you are having a lovely, lovely kind of sane holiday with you and yours. Enjoy this Dork Forest. It's a good one. Thanks. Hey, it's Jackie Cation. I'm sitting in my hotel room because I'm doing Acme this week with Maria, and I'm with Brandi Brown, who's wanted to be on the show, and we've both known that we are nerds, and you are wearing a Dork Forest sweatshirt.
Yes, I decided to wear the dorkiest thing I could wear, which is a Dork Forest sweatshirt to the Dork Forest podcast.
That's it. You were a proud owner of the you're a ranger of the Dork Forest.
Yes.
And you're a stand-up comic here in Minneapolis.
Correct.
That's right. You have your own podcast called Brandi and Bill
Talk About Blaxploitation.
Talk About Blaxploitation. And is it just the movies of Blaxploitation?
I don't watch a lot of movies. So my friend Bill, who's white and about 10 years older than me, was like, we need to do a podcast. And so we watched the movies separately. I think the next one we're going to do is tomorrow together. And then we just talk about them. Like, we summarize them, and then
it's an assignment.
Yeah.
You were assigned a movie from the 70s most of the time?
Yeah,
or?
and if it's on Netflix or Amazon Prime.
It all happens.
Yeah, and then it's just me being like, what is this? Like, why is this happening?
Excellent. So it's on iTunes?
Yes.
Okay, so, and it's relatively new.
Yes.
So,
we have 3 episodes.
There you go. You get in on the ground floor,
Yeah,
people.
we have a website, blaxploitationpodcast.com.
There you go. Yeah. Well played. And then you also have a blog that you started in college about procrastination.
Yeah, it's just called houseofprocrastination.org.
.org.
Nonprofit. And I blog about all sorts of stuff. I read Justin Bieber's memoir. And yeah, spoiler alert, it ends when he does not get his permit.
His permit?
His license. Like, he wrote it when he was like 16. And I literally was just going to read it. I checked it out from the library. And I was going to send quotes to my friend, but there were so many great quotes that I just wrote like a series of posts where I just totally went in depth on it. So
yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, the fact that he's got a memoir and he's, 19 or 20?
Oh, it was written when he was 16.
Yeah.
And it's pretty funny. There's he's obsessed with Beyonce. There's an entire page where it's just in different fonts. It just says, I like girls, 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 girls. That's an entire page.
That's a whole page?
That's a whole page.
Do you think he might like boys?
He really likes Beyonce a lot.
Okay.
So I don't know. That doesn't, obviously a lot of boys who like boys really like Beyonce a lot.
Right.
But
and he's also 16, so he might just like girls
a lot. Like, he talks about, he's like, I'm 12, I have raging hormones. Like, he admits it. Like,
right.
That, like,
and he has been told, no doubt, because all he does is hang around with 45-year-olds who are like, dude, you're in your prime. You gotta go get some.
Yeah, there's an entire post I wrote, because I divided it up into, like, his background and his, like, it's called Celebrity People Problems, and it's just about, like, all the celebrities he talks about hanging out with.
Okay.
And about, like, Usher, and I think I wrote something about, I was like, how did they join forces? And, like, Usher was like, I need to bring, like, how do I bring this white kid from Canada to, like, this southern black guy?
Yeah.
And I was like, we need something that would bring us together, like a peach poutine, but like a cobbler. It's just like, it's ridiculous. It's amazing.
That is hilarious. So you have many dorkdoms. We have discussed them, and you're like, there are 3 I want to talk about, and none of them were anyone else talked about. So let's get into the first one. You enjoy the Supreme Court of the United States.
Yes.
What do you know historically about the Supreme Court?
Well, here's the thing. I was a political science major in college.
Me too.
Yeah, but like I'm obsessed with their personalities. Like they're just.
Did you do domestic poli-sci?
I did all 3 at some. I did theory, and then I was American politics, and then I settled on international relations just because I.
Oh, that's right. You did international because all the basics were like American politics.
Yeah, I took
and
2
theory.
constitutional studies courses.
Okay, I did all Southeast Asia, so I don't have. I have almost no information about the United States.
And I generally, that was okay, but I didn't have, I wasn't really that interested in the law. I was like, Dred Scott, that was a terrible decision. Like, that was all Bush v. Gore. But, I read Jeffry Toobin's book, The Nine. Yeah, okay. And it was about the Supreme Court, at the time, Rehnquist had died, I think, and he got to spend a lot of time with them, and I was like, these people are insane.
Right.
Because they're kind of like Hollywood, A-list actors, where, they're unchecked, and, they can do whatever they want.
Right, they're appointed for life.
Yeah, and they're all, and they're really, really smart, but also just really, really weird.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm supposed to get the job.
Yeah.
Right. You think about, you're a lawyer, and is everyone a lawyer?
Yeah, they pretty much.
I wonder if in the beginning they were appointing.
Oh well, there
people.
were some who weren't. They were just because technically on the Supreme Court, anyone can be appointed. I wrote a Fringe Festival show 2 years ago about the Supreme Court. Because I basically was
what was that called?
It was called SCOTUS, Supreme Court of the United States. And the premise of that was there was because the Supreme Court is also really bad with technology, but they have a lot of tech cases.
Okay. Because they're all 100.
Yeah, and there are some great quotes, for example, this was a Wall Street Journal article. There was a text messaging case because I guess somebody was texting using their work phone, and the questions they were asking, one of them was what if 2 people send a text to each other at the same time? What happens? And they're like, can you print out text messages? Insane questions where you're like, oh my God, these people are deciding important things.
Right.
They don't understand how this works.
Right, but the thing is that you say that, but when you said, can you print out text messages, it took me a second to go, yeah, you'd have to hook it up to a computer, but of course you could. So it took me a second, but how much more with and how fast the technology is moving. It is crazy. So what do they have to get tech advisors?
I guess their clerks do it because the clerks end up doing a lot of the research.
Right, because to clerk at the Supreme Court,
and you're
probably doesn't pay very well, but is a high profile.
Yeah, all the people who go to clerk at the Supreme Court they get bonuses when they sign with firms when they leave.
Oh, so
they get a ton of money when they go private sector. And I knew someone who
because those are some connections, man.
There are people who went to McKinsey and stuff before then they went to the Supreme Court to clerk. But the play I wrote was there was a 28-year-old girl who was like a Stanford grad, and she worked for Farmville in Farmville mergers and acquisitions.
Okay.
And
not the video game on Facebook.
Yeah, the video game on Facebook. So
the Facebook video game Farmville and this is the play.
The play. So there's she basically worked at a white sneaker law firm in Silicon Valley where they handled high profile mergers and acquisitions in Farmville.
Okay.
And she the president's daughter was her roommate in college, and they're like, we need a Supreme Court justice, and the Congress is just completely dysfunctional. So they're just whoever, just get someone, will approve them because they're on filibuster break.
Okay, now it's a documentary.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is all just the background, but it's not really in the play. So she gets appointed. So this 28-year-old who's just really optimistic. It's more an allegory about Obama, but she's like, I can change it all. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to allow cameras in the Supreme Court, which is a really contentious issue.
Oh. Because there are no cameras in the Supreme Court?
There are no cameras. They just allowed audio. And so she.
That's interesting. Is there a court reporter?
I mean, they release a transcript.
Right. But they can strike things from the transcript and they can redact things, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, they don't because it's public. You could publicly just go watch the oral arguments, but they won't, it's literally, there's no good reason, basically, like, the newer justices are like, why not? I mean, you could do it at the federal level.
Right, and so they've grown up in this system of always
but, like,
being
now
recorded.
the current, like, the older justices are like, no, tradition, no. Like, they're really just, like, they just don't want it.
Right, if they haven't been recorded their entire lives, why would they want to be...
Yeah.
Yeah, but the newer ones are like, no, I've been recorded
Like,
my entire life. Who cares? Nobody's listening
Yeah, they're just
to this,
like,
I promise you.
we want our privacy. But, like, everybody knows who they are. It's just, there was a case called the Sunlight Law, or like a law that, I forgot, I think Orrin Hatch maybe. But, like, a bunch of congressional people are just like, no, why not? Like... And so this law would give the Chief Justice, in real life, the law was going to give the Chief Justice discretion over, like, we'll allow cameras in. Like, for example, for Prop 8, after the oral arguments, I think one of their arguments that's kind of valid is, it'll turn into celebrity stuff, like the advocates would, but, like, for the reading of the decisions, there's no point to not having cameras in there.
Right.
But that law just somehow didn't,
It did never catch up.
It didn't ever catch up. So in this thing, this law has passed in my play. And so she's going to go on, she's going to have cameras. And I had a cast of 4 people, 4 justices, a clerk, and 2 NPR people, except the NPR thing was called National Elitist Radio.
Excellent, because they are.
Yeah, and their motto was, because we're a little bit better than you.
Yes.
And one of the NER people was Cater Cart, who passed away, and Greg Beltz, who was on their podcast too. And then they were kind of the Greek chorus of this. Okay. So she comes to the Supreme Court. She brings her clerk, which is like her best friend from law school. And the 4 justices are, one of them just wants to act. And he was like a really good actor at Yale, but like he ended up in law school and he's like, I don't even really want to do this.
Right. And so he's psyched about the cameras.
He's really psyched. He really wants it. And he's always on the phone with his agent, who's just a book agent, but he's like, can you get me on Animal Court? How about Law and Order? Like anything? And they're like, no, just write your memoir. One of them is a justice who is a strict constitutionalist, to the point that like she's really obsessed with like how the founding fathers did everything. Like she homebrews her own beers in the style of the founding fathers, like whatever they did. And she also will twist anything to be about like the founding fathers. So at one point, the Chief Justice, who's this 28-year-old, is like, "You're a woman. Like the Supreme Court didn't care about you. The founding fathers didn't care about you." And she was like,
"You are not a white land-owning man."
Yeah, and she was like, "I don't think you understand. We the people just meant like me and my friends." Like so she, so she was just like, "It's really not about gender or anything. It's about." Do I want my friends to be equal? And she's like, and I do. Right. So, and then there's one justice who always speaks in sports metaphors, which is something that Justice Roberts really does. Like, he's always just using them a lot. And
is he running the ball somewhere?
Yeah, like that kind of stuff. Like, like we gotta be a team. It's like a lot. But this justice is obsessed with sports and also hates Wisconsin.
Does he hate the state, or does he hate
just
the sporting?
Everything about Wisconsin, just the state
events.
of Wisconsin.
All right.
And then the final justice, and then you have like the Chief Justice, who's basically, I modeled her off like the kind of like optimism of Obama, but also like a 28-year-old, just like Sex in the City type. Like, I'm gonna go there.
There's been casting of the Supreme Court in your play.
Yeah.
Of everyone's in their late 20s.
No, the rest of the cast is like, they're supposed to be just regular justices.
No, but the whole justices are, but everyone you said was 28 years old.
No, just the Chief Justice.
Okay.
So the Chief Justice.
So the other, okay.
So they're all like older.
I misunderstood.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's okay. It's kind of convoluted. And so the crazy thing about when I was writing this is I'm one of those people who's obsessed with stuff being factually correct.
Amen.
And
Thank God.
So I would email my friends who are attorneys and like professors, and I figured out that you only need, technically, there's no minimum for how many people can be on the Supreme, or no maximum, but there is a minimum. You need at least 6 justices to have quorum.
Okay.
So basically how I dealt with the other 2 is that I just had them say at some point that the justices really didn't care, and it was a dysfunctional court, so you can't like ever get rid of people.
So you went with 4.
Yeah, and the case that they're hearing, so you've got like the plot line of allowing cameras in the court, and 2 of them really want it. One of them kind of really doesn't want it, the strict constructionist. The sports one doesn't want it because of the purity of the game. And the Chief Justice is going to like choose it because ultimately it comes down to her. Whatever she wants is going to happen. But then the constitutional was like, I'll quit. And so that's going on. But the case they're hearing is a case where Wisconsin decides to repeal the law of gravity. Because they wanted to attract aerospace, like testing to their state. And therefore, if you repeal gravity. And so I had to email like serious attorneys and be like, hey.
Do you have issues with Wisconsin? Is that why?
Yeah, I'm Minnesotan, so of course I have a lot.
Do you realize
of
most of Wisconsin doesn't care about Minnesota?
Yeah, but
you care about Wisconsin. It's
No,
flattering.
it's
flattering.
Not. It's really
flattering.
just one of those things where I just like to, like, poke the bear sometimes. I have friends from Wisconsin.
No, I've met people who don't like Illinois a lot, and you're like, what are you? Okay,
it's the same thing. Like I just like
nobody's
to
ever.
jokingly,
Yeah, nobody's ever.
like,
But okay, yeah. So Wisconsin's the bad guy.
Yeah,
go for it.
And I feel like there was a lot of stuff going on with Wisconsin with Scott Walker and that's
Michelle
why I chose
Bachmann.
it.
Yeah.
Well, and so there's
that one. She's here.
Yeah, she's
Bachmann's here. I thought she was in Wisconsin too.
she's. We'd like to trade her to Wisconsin, but
sure.
she's here.
You have your own assholes.
Yeah.
Wisconsin has its own assholes. Florida has the rest of the assholes.
And there's actually like a Michelle Bachmann like reference, but not directly to her, because I didn't want to make the play political, like in the current political context, because I was like, I don't want people just being like, I don't like this, it's too, and everyone liked it except the Star Tribune. They were just like, we hate this because it's not enough jokes about like, real politics.
Oh, weird.
But anyway, I had to email constitutional professors and like attorneys. I'm like, how can you technically repeal the law? Like, what would be the constitutional argument? And they were just like, we don't know what you're doing, but we're going to go with you have a reason for asking. And they would write like serious responses back.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. And they're like, well, you could say like under equal protection, you could do this, or you could go with like the law, the way it like was implemented wasn't.
You're talking about gravity?
Yeah. Okay. Like repealing gravity. How would you challenge? How could this ever be challenged in the Supreme Court? Right. So, so I did that. And then, it was a fun show, but like, to explain more things, I would have the NPR or the NER people kind of be like the Greek chorus. And for example, like on NPR, whenever there used to be, before the audio was released, Nina Totenberg would just read back and forth the transcript. So she'd be like, Justice Rehnquist, da-da-da. And she's like...
Yeah, this guy said that.
Yeah.
So this is what got you into the interest in the Supreme Court.
Well, that was way after it. What started, like, what even led to the play is that I read Jeffrey Toobin's The Nine. Right. And I said to one of my friends from college, I was like, and she's in law school at the time, I was like, yeah, they should totally, like, make a show about the Supreme Court, because they're all insane, but given the political climate, this would never work. And this was like in 2008.
Yeah.
And,
that's my Bush couldn't even survive 9/11.
And, I was like, West Wing now could never work.
Yeah, well, except for that it does work, because it's Sorkin just rehashing his own stuff in other shows.
Yeah, in the newsroom.
It's the same show.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
But like,
it's still happening.
It's still happening, but like the same, like people would be like, no, too much politics, or like,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
okay.
it would probably like on HBO, but also the Supreme Court is so mysterious, like it's not interesting enough, like the presidency.
Yeah, no one would care about, no one wants to watch 9 old people argue.
Yeah, so
did you ever read Tina Fey's book?
Yeah.
Because there's that one point where she says, I'm really happy that everyone likes 30 Rock, but we were trying to make Home Improvement.
Yeah.
We weren't trying to make a hipster, cool thing. We were trying to make Friends, you guys.
Yeah.
We're really sorry. And so...
we would just sit there and we would think of like people we wanted to cast. We just had this running joke.
Yeah.
And then someone's like, you should write this for the Fringe Festival. And I was like, it happened, but like I'm still really obsessed with the Supreme Court because, like I said, they are so insane. Like the workings of it, that's all like the structural and like how people are appointed and like how the law would actually happen.
Explain that, because I don't. Here's the thing: is all I see are the hearings, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the hearings are pretty much a grandstanding thing.
I'm still attached.
Yeah.
Hello. Hi, I'm going to get my soda, because that's what I do. I leave in the middle of the show. Every show, I like to get up and walk over and find my soda. Or my coffee.
It's a
or my
recurring gag.
That's it. That's my ice.
I mean, they have the appointments, but right now they're of no, like, use. Like, I think there was, it's just the justice will be like, oh, I will choose, I'll be fair. And they're like, all right. And it's just like, since the Bork hearing where they were like, you're crazy. Like,
I don't know what that is. What is that?
Like, Reagan appointed in 1986, I believe, someone to the Supreme Court. And he was rejected. Like, he did not get on the court.
Okay.
But, like, since then, it's pretty much just a rubber stamping. I mean, technically they could oppose people, but, like, they don't.
I wonder historically how many people have been denied.
I really feel like I should know that. Oh, I know what else happened. Then there was when George W. Bush tried to appoint, like, his lawyer.
Right.
And and everyone, like, you could tell that they were just like, this is a terrible idea, which you knew it was a terrible idea when the Democrats were like, yes, we will completely approve her. Because it turns out, she went to, like, Southern Methodist University, which doesn't even, I mean, it shouldn't really matter necessarily, but there's this whole, like, that's not that good a law school. And, but more importantly, she's pretty, like, liberal leaning. It indicates, like, a lot of stuff indicates that. And the Democrats were like, yeah, sure, we'll take this.
So did he withdraw?
He withdrew her, and then Alito, or Roberts, one of them.
Right.
But, like, yeah, so...
What was the 9 about?
The 9 was just about...
Was it a history of the
No,
court?
it was just the current court.
The current court talking about who was on it and what their politics were,
Like,
or what their...
He got to, like, hang out with them and, like, interview them and, like, get to know them, and it was about, like, their lives a lot. Just the life of the Supreme Court. So, like, you'd find out crazy stuff, like Chief Justice Rehnquist one day showed up on the court with his robe, and he had, like, 3 stripes on it. And they were just like, why do you have stripes in your robe? And he's like, oh, I saw, it was like, maybe it was like HMS Pinafore or something. He was just like, that looked cool. And they were like, okay. Like, the other justices are like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. And
so he decorated his robes?
Because he loved...
To give him hashtags
to look, like, cool.
For, like, he thought it was like a sergeant thing? Where,
yeah, he just
like,
looked cool. He thought it was cool. He saw it in a play, and it looked cool, and he wanted to do that.
Somebody had judges' robes with hash marks on it, and he was like, let's do this?
Yeah, like a captain on a ship in a play. And they're all...
So not even a judge robe. It was a captain of a ship?
It was like HMS Pinafore or some play. I don't remember the
musical. He's in a play where somebody was wearing a uniform.
Yeah,
and he said, I'm going to put hash marks...
I'm the captain of this ship. I want to do that. Yeah, he did that. And the other justices were literally like, what the hell are you doing? And then, like, they're like, and Scalia and Ginsburg are on, like, politically opposite ends, but they're, like, best friends, and they love opera. So they'll go and be extras in, like, the Metropolitan Opera. Or, like...
In real life.
Like, yeah. Like, they'll go... They'll
be in the background of operas.
They do opera.
Because they love opera.
They love opera. They love opera so much.
Could they be more the 1%? And Louis Lee loves opera, but he's the only person I've known in real life who's like, you know what I love? Opera.
I know a lot of people who love opera who are just pretty, like, I know pretty middle-class people.
Who love opera.
Yeah. I love classical music, but I don't really like opera. I have my favorites of opera.
I love marching bands, but I don't have a lot of, like, I couldn't name current marching bands.
For example, or I love a couple operas.
I love some songs from operas.
Yeah, but
I couldn't sit through an entire... And people... I've tried to have an opera dork on before, and it has not taken. I'm looking for that, and a tropical fish dork.
I can get you both of those.
Well, it'll all work out.
But, like, yeah, they love opera. And, it was written before Sotomayor was appointed and Kagan was appointed. But, like, Sotomayor is... right now, my favorite justice. I love Ginsburg, and I love Sotomayor. Sotomayor is the first justice to be on Sesame Street.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
right.
And her Sesame Street was amazing. So she did 2 sketches, and I think Sesame Street, outside of Key and Peele, is the best sketch show on television.
You heard it here first, people.
It is outstanding. But, like,
excellent. Well, you've made me want to go see it now.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a YouTube page dedicated entirely to the sketches of Sesame Street.
They do. Sesame Street has one. They did a Homeland parody called Homeland, and it was great.
Oh my God.
They did a Mad Men parody. Like, Sesame Street's YouTube page is amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, so you gotta hit that up. But, like, so on the first sketch, she's talking to Abby, who's a monster, and she's like, I want to be a princess. And she's like, she was like, what career do you want? She's like, a princess. And Justice Sotomayor was like, that's not a career. Like, she basically told this little kid, she's like, that's not a real job.
That isn't a real job.
Like,
and we don't live in a monarchy.
Yeah, she was like, that's great, you want to dream, but, like, maybe you should get a real job, like a doctor or a lawyer or like a judge like me. And then the monster's kind of like sad, and she's like, yeah, I want to be a judge like you.
And then I want to be a princess. Did she not mention the fact that we don't live in a monarchy?
No, she's just like, that's not a thing.
Okay.
Like, and she's like, that's absurd. And it was just like, real talk, that's crazy. And then the second sketch she did is that Justice Sotomayor is having tea with Maria, who still lives on Sesame Street. And
Who likes to move?
yeah,
Nobody likes to move.
moves. She's just like, look, no taxes. It's like, if we left, there would be no adults here. It's problematic. Like,
Right, they can't run themselves.
yeah,
these
so
children.
she's
and
having
monsters.
tea in the street, and they're just like talking, and all of a sudden, Baby Bear and Goldilocks show up, and Baby Bear's like, hey, sorry to bother you, but I heard you're a judge. And Maria's like, basically, get out of here, we're talking. And Justice Sotomayor's like, no, this is my thing. Like, I want to do this.
Oh my
and
God.
so she, like, has this thing with, like, Baby Bear, like, what happened? She's like, well, she broke my chair, and da-da-da. And you're like, well, you guys come to a compromise. And, like, it's weird because if this were a real case, she'd be like, you owe the bear for damages. And I emailed it to my friend who's in law, like, is a lawyer now, clerking, and she's like, this is absurd. There are winners and losers in the law, and she needs to teach kids that. And I was just like, but it's so funny that it's just like the justice is, she has like, she's wearing her robe.
Great.
And, you know.
No hashtags.
No hash marks.
Or hash
She has
marks.
a doily.
I don't know why I keep saying
Yeah, I was
hashtag.
like, it's not a Twitter.
It's a
Twitter robe.
I saw a YouTube video with a new entertainment, the new entertainment liaison. It was a sketch for IO West improv. It was an improv group, and his name is Lil Hashtag. And Lil Hashtag raps about entertainment news, all in hashtags. Like he'll talk about Beyonce, and then he'll go hashtag not cool or whatever, you know.
Mariah Carey released a song that had hashtag in the title. Like,
wow.
Yeah, that's a thing now.
Right, and At Midnight, of course,
Yeah.
is a TV show that has the at symbol in it.
Yeah.
And that happens to be their Twitter handle.
Yeah.
So
But
that's awesome that she was on Sesame Street.
but because I guess they tried to get Ginsburg, and Ginsburg was like, nope, because she's definitely not on board with cameras either.
Right.
And she was like, I don't want to do it. But like, I love Ginsburg because Ginsburg is so angry on the bench when she reads her dissents. Because normally when they read it, they don't read the dissent. But like, sometimes you do if it's like that important a case.
Right.
And she will go off on a case sometimes. Like, she'll just be like, no.
This is not cool
This
that
is BS. Like,
that got passed or whatever.
You know, Ledbetter, when they ruled that I think it was Goodyear Tire, basically it was a sex discrimination case, and the Supreme Court ruled that you have 180 days from the time the initial incident goes down to like file. Which is absurd. It's an absurd, like, short amount of time because you don't find out a lot of, like, discrimination stuff happens until way after the fact.
Right. You have 4 months?
Yeah, you basically have, like, 4 or 6 months or something. It was a ruling that...
What's 30 into 180?
Yeah.
I'll be over here. It's 6
6
months,
months.
Jackie. Okay, there we go.
But, like, it was one of those crazy things where it was such a bad decision that, like, when Obama got into office, they basically passed a law that...
make it
legal, like, to redo the Supreme Court. It was that bad a ruling. I'd say it's one of the worst rulings of the Supreme Court. Obviously, Bush v. Gore in recent memory. Dred Scott was terrible.
That was one of the original terrible
Plessy
decisions.
versus Ferguson.
What was Plessy versus Ferguson?
Separate but equals, okay.
Oh, right. Okay.
But, like, the great thing about Dred Scott is I just learned that in Minnesota there is a mini golf course called the Dred Scott Miniature Golf Course.
Hilarious.
In Bloomington, Minnesota.
Fantastic.
Which makes me
In Bloomington?
Yeah, which makes me, like, wonder...
What's the logo?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But, like, I just want more terrible Supreme Court, like, mini golf courses.
Right.
Like, Plessy
it's a
versus
hell of a...
Ferguson, putt-putt.
You know, that one of the sponsors of the Dork Forest was the Society of the Spectacle, where I got my glasses over in Eagle Rock. And here's an extra ad for them. But the thing is it's named after a communist treatise written in French in 1967 called the Society of the Spectacle, and they've named their eyeglass store after that treatise. And you're like, what's happening?
It's like, do they have, like, only one kind of frame there? Yeah, people stand in line waiting for it.
They're government frames, and they're free. And I don't know if you ever... My brother got welfare frames when we were kids.
To each according to their eyesight.
So what are your... So those are some of the worst cases that you know of? What are some of your favorite cases?
I mean, I don't even know, you know...
You got 2 favorite justices.
Yeah, I think...
And you got 2 favorite... You got 3 favorite... 3 least favorite cases.
Well, I'm trying to think of my favorite... Obviously, when they repealed, you know, DOMA. That was huge.
Right. That just happened.
Yeah, that just happened. You know, obviously, Brown versus the Board of Education, I have a funny story about that. My family, it turns out my family, like, lived in Kansas for a while. I have a lot of family in Topeka, but my mom, my grandma are all from Minnesota.
Such a braggart.
Yeah, I thought for a long time that my mom may have been the Brown in Brown versus the Board of Education.
Because your last name was Brown.
Yeah, and she was like, I was way too young to be that. And my mom was like, no, I wasn't that Brown.
We were not related to that Brown.
It was in Topeka. And I was like,
it was in Topeka. Your last name is Brown.
My last name is Brown.
Let's do this.
Yeah, and she was like, nope, that wasn't me. And I was like,
we could have been famous.
Yeah, so that was, you know, that's huge. Yeah, it's just...
What other, now, here's the thing about the sketches. I'm seriously looking up the Sesame Street sketches
it's the
now.
best webpage. They have a Mad Men one. They did Sons of Anarchy, except it was called Sons of Poetry.
Oh my god. What was the Mad Men one?
Oh,
Did they
I
do
forgot.
a Breaking Bad one?
Not yet, but I feel like they would. Like, they did
It's
Law and
called
Order
drugs.
Special Letters Unit.
Special Letters.
They took the most rapey of the Law and Orders.
Oh my god. I
and they
hate Special Victims
Yeah,
Unit.
but it was great because the letter M was missing, and so
Dun, dun,
the
dun.
characters all looked. There was like a Munch, and there was like the Kragan, and so they were trying to find the letter M, and they'd bring in like a cow, and they'd be like moo, and they're like that's not an M, and they'd bring in something else, and then all of a sudden the letter M wanders into the police station, but it's wearing a mustache, and it's like you know, like they're like what are you doing here, and someone's like that's an M, and he's like you got me, and then but they never explain why they're looking for it.
Right, like they might just want to question it.
Yeah, and also I was like, they just arrested. I was like, first of all, the ACLU, which is 4 letters, they should be in this sketch.
Right.
And,
That'd be so awesome.
and I think I wrote a post about that. And there's another one where it's like, they used to have like Masterpiece Theater, but it was like hosted by Cookie Monster. And there's a Twin Peaks one on there.
I think I saw one of the Masterpiece Theaters just because that's been around.
Masterpiece Theater,
Yeah, and that one's been so long because I haven't watched Sesame Street in years.
Yeah.
Clearly an error on my part that I am
it's
not watching
so
enough
great.
Sesame Street.
Like their Homeland sketch was just insane because they were just trying to find like this missing wolf who was you know, it was Nick Baha Rhodey, and so like every time they'd be like, and so like Saul, like the Saul lamb would be like Gary, and then she would, and so like all of a sudden like the big bad wolf who's Nick Brady comes in like a sheep costume. She's like, "What big eyes you have?" And she's like falling in love with him, and then one person's like, "I don't know," and she was like, "But that seems suspicious." But then like they catch him, and he turns out to be the wolf, and he runs out, and Carrie's like, "Oh no, come back, I love you." And they're just like, "But we thought you said he was, you know, he's a bad guy." And she's like, "But maybe I'm wrong." And she like goes and chases after him.
Wow.
So yeah, it's...
If you watch Homeland, I bet that is hilarious.
Yeah, and I don't really watch Mad Men. It's called like Sad Men or something. They go through feelings. And then Sons of Poetry, they do rhyming. It's this motorcycle gang that rhymes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's great.
Okay, yeah, I need to get involved. I need to get involved in some sketches of Sesame Street.
Yeah.
And I don't even watch any of those shows, though I hear that they're all excellent.
I don't either, but like you're just like...
But you get it.
And you know enough about it,
Yeah.
where I'm just like, Sons of Anarchy is not a kid's show remotely.
Right.
Homeland,
Special
what?
Victims Unit is about hurting children, almost always.
Yeah.
And, wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so now, the other political thing that you were really into, you said you want to talk about Canada.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about Toronto Madman, or did you want to talk about Canada in general?
Along the lines of, I'm obsessed with public radio, and I'm obsessed, like, somehow in college I would listen to the CBC.
Okay. That's
an
an exciting time. I've listened to some CBC.
I've called
What
into
did you
the
love
BBC.
about the CBC?
I've called into the BBC.
The
in
BBC?
College. So in college...
That BBC is British.
So in college I had severe depression, and at one point I became perfectly nocturnal. Like, obviously not going to class.
Right.
But like I'd be up late at night, and this was before the start of the Iraq War.
Okay.
So I would call in, I had like a calling card, and I had like extra minutes on it. I would call into their late night show, and they had a U.S. general on, and I was like, hey, before we go to war in Iraq, what's your end game? Because once Saddam is gone, you know, and they'd call me like, oh, it's Brandi from America. And they're just like,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, so the general and the guy from the BBC is like, yeah, what is your game plan? The general's like, I don't know.
You heard it here first,
Yeah.
people. Brandi Brown wanted to know the end game before we went into Baghdad in 2003.
Yeah.
She wanted to know. She knew that there was no plan.
And so the general's like, we don't, like, he was fudging it, and then, like, I was like, all right, we are so screwed.
Yeah.
And then I hung up. So I used to listen to that, and then I took 2 years off from college, and I went back and, like,
Did you go back?
Yeah.
Did you go back and finish?
I went back
You know what
and
they always
finished.
say? They always say nobody ever finishes. And this, what you are? Beacon of Hope.
I'm a beacon
My
of
sister
hope.
took off 2 years and went back and finished.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yep.
Where'd you go to college?
Williams College in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Western
is it
Mass.
Purple with
Purple and gold.
Purple and gold. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a sweatshirt that belonged to a friend of mine who stole it from her boyfriend. So there you go. It's a really nice sweatshirt. I'll bring it for you.
We
It's
have quality sweatshirts.
Yeah, it was a nice one, and it's from the 80s.
Ooh.
So it's vintage.
Collectible. Ooh, yes. I would like to see
Yeah,
that.
yeah, because she said she doesn't want it back, and you're like, you're
And
probably
that's Vikings
lying.
color, so you're like, I want no part of that.
Oh, right. If I cared about football, I would care about that.
Yes.
I'm unmoved about football. I was just on the Acme's podcast today, and they were like, so you're from Wisconsin, you probably have a lot to care about the Packers, and I was like, no.
I only care about fantasy football. I don't care about the Vikings anymore. I'm just like, whatever.
Okay.
They're still...
Right. I only know because I'm from Wisconsin that something happened to the quarterback and there's a new quarterback.
Yeah.
That's all I know. And I'm like, well, I hope it all works out for everyone. and so we left it at that.
Yeah.
And but I think that the guy who hosts the Acme Pod, he really wanted to talk about football. So you should go talk
Well, I
about
feel like that's how
fantasy
Minnesotans... That's like our... like small talk with anyone from Wisconsin, like, so Packers, and then when you just like you messed up his game by being like, I don't care.
Yeah, I might have. It was we had to go into video games and comic books, and it was fine. But so what about Canada?
Oh, so like when I went back to school, I decided to start listening to CBC because I like As It Happens, which airs in the United States, and somehow I just started listening to it a little bit.
Is
like,
As It Happens that show where they go into rural Canada and they talk to people? That might be a different show.
No, that's most of them, but like, they just,
Because most of Canada
it's
is
the one where
rural.
they have like maybe like 3 segments and it's like a news thing where they kind of interview people on different things all over the world. And it's kind of hard to describe, but it's hosted by, it used to be hosted by like 2 women. Now it's a man and a woman.
Do you know those people's names?
One of them is Carol Off,
Her name is Carol Off.
or yeah,
OFF.
I think it's Off or Orf. I don't remember. Like, but Carol, I think it's Carol Off. Or
Good for
something.
her. Good for her
and
for
then-
having a regular name.
Yeah, and they're pretty.
That sounds like the name of like Nancy Drew's client.
And then like one of them, like in Canada, it's a 90-minute show, but when it airs in the US, it's 60 minutes.
We don't have the attention span.
Yeah.
We just can't stick it out.
So I started listening to CBC, and then when I graduated from college, my boss, who's Canadian, like we had clients in Canada, and I was like, I just somehow became obsessed with Canada. Like I literally don't know how I just started listening to so much CBC, but I started following a lot of Canadian things on Twitter, and
And what year is this?
I graduated in 07. And this is like 07, 08.
Okay.
I just started
Really,
reading.
you're Canadian centric, right around
Yeah.
2007,
Yeah.
2008. Okay.
And let me preface this with, I know that Guy Branum talked about Canada,
Oh, he talked about the history of politics.
but like I don't know. I'm obsessed with just Canadian news.
Right. You got random Canadian stuff.
Yeah.
Guy Branum. It was all
Eber,
political
you know.
history.
Yeah,
And
no.
yeah.
No, although their Supreme Court is adorable. They wear.
Do they have 9 guys?
No, they have an age limit. They have men and women. I think their Chief Justice is a woman, and they wear like red robes. It looks like a Christmas card. Like their Supreme Court group picture.
Are they dressed as Mounties? Is that what you're hearing?
No,
Is it?
they look like the College of Cardinals, kind of. Like
Okay.
those kind of capes and stuff, and then they wear the wigs.
Oh, because they're British.
Yeah,
Right.
Commonwealth, and
They don't know that they separated from Great Britain, as Guy Branum explained on episode whatever. Please Google Dork Forest Guy Branum and find out that the Canadians have not really recognized the fact that the British have separated from them probably 50 years ago.
Yeah, they talk about that. Like they're just like, should we completely? And they're who cares?
And they're like, they're
Yeah.
just like, no, we're still part of you. And Britain's like, Are you?
Yeah,
All
they
right.
will come by and visit. They're like, they stop by.
They're still on the money.
Yeah, they're still on the money, and the crown is still like, they have the crown royal, whatever.
Sure. Last episode was with Canadian Rhiannon Archer.
Oh.
She does taxidermy with stuffed animals.
Where in Canada is she from?
Toronto.
Okay, yeah.
Not originally from, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm upset. So I just listened to their news, and they have the most, like, adorable news where it'll be like, first of all, they have fewer guns, so everybody's getting stabbed, or else they find creative ways to kill people, which is bizarre, and that's terrible that they're murdering people, but it's also, there's some really weird crimes that happen. Like, there was someone who,
Because
like,
they don't have the convenience of guns.
somebody killed a baby with, like, a pool, like, ball in a sock, and you're like, that's terrible, but, like, that's, I mean, America would do that too, but, like,
Like a billiard, like a cue ball?
Yeah, a cue ball
and a sock.
Yeah, and there's, like, in Winnipeg...
They beat someone, they beat a baby to
I
death
think it was
with
like a baby or something. Like, I would, you're like, that's terrible. And, like, there would be terrible murders, but a lot of knifings. Like, where you're, like, there would be, like, mass knifings.
Right.
And, like, in Montreal, not Montreal, in Vancouver, I believe there was, like, a mass killing with a knife.
Okay.
And, like, that's always, I have so many questions about those always. Like, I'll give you 2 murders, but, like, the rest of the people could take them or run. Like,
Right. Yeah. At what point is people still standing around
and I
waiting
think it
to
was
get
a situation
stabbed?
where someone's, like, they're trapped in... like an apartment or something. That's what happened.
Okay, so some guy, it's a sort of bad day at home, and if he had a gun, he would have shot his family and then himself.
I think it was like a party where he went in with a knife. But like, it's crazy to me anytime there's a mass knifing, because that's, you can just team up, like, fight or flight.
Right. Well, you know what? People are very interested in the individual.
Yeah. So
it's hard
and then
to...
you have, like, in Canada, you have the Greyhound situation where the guy beheaded a passenger on the Greyhound. And that's terrible.
No, I don't know about that.
That happened in, like a few years ago.
Okay.
But, like, those are the terrible things. But then they have some adorable, like, national news stories. Like, there was one where a box of puppies...
I wonder why Canadians think that we're a little condescending. As you call them, their murders are adorable, now the puppies are adorable.
Those aren't adorable. Those are terrible. But, like, they're... And this might just be the CBC. Honestly, the CBC will just... I'm going to put
Just
this
makes
I'm not
things-
going to blanket the Canadian people. The CBC
Makes things lighter.
The CBC is like if you took your local news and just made it national.
Okay.
Like that kind of thing where you're like, today a raccoon was found in a garbage can. Like, that's the CBC.
Right.
So, like, they found a box of puppies in Halifax, and it was like the headline of, like, the provincial news, and then they're like, the whole point of the story was the puppies were fine, they were just a little cold. End of story. There was another one where my favorite recent one was a CBC podcast where they're like, and next up, Chris De La Torre talks about his encounter with an angry goose.
All right, a lot of animal-related tales.
Yeah, he was biking and an angry goose.
Goose are mean, actually.
Yeah.
Goose will attack.
Yeah, and that was the end of the story.
I have
he was
no
scared.
doubt. Right, but he got away.
That was the story.
That's
This
the
was
whole
a news
story.
story on CBC.
Anybody put the goose down?
No.
Eat him for dinner?
No, but there was another incident where a guy was smoking on his porch in British Columbia, and a bear appeared as he just slapped the bear, and the bear, like, turned around and left because it was ashamed. I mean, you just got slapped.
Right. He was just like, all right.
He slapped it in the face. Like, didn't punch it. He slapped it in the face, and then he just got smoked.
Why I never thwack.
And the bear probably had to go back, like, all embarrassed.
It
Like,
was
oh, man.
there's going to be people hitting me. I'm going to go.
It's like that bear's dignity. Just
Exactly. Gone to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah, so, I mean, I just, I love the CBC. I love their show, Q, which is, like, entertainment podcast type. It's a real show. So it's kind of like Fresh Air.
Okay.
Kind of, but, like,
Where
there
they
are more
interview
segments.
Do they interview celebrities about
Yeah,
stuff?
they interview celebrities, they interview, authors, they have a musical guest sometimes.
Okay, it's like All Things Considered. So, okay.
Yeah, and so they'll have, like, they have a media panel sometimes. They'll bring in different media sources.
Radio, magazine kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. So I like that show. I like, I don't know. I just became obsessed with Canada. And so I have a friend named Matthew Foster who I met through the Fringe Festival who's from here. And he speaks like 50 languages. And he loves Montreal. And we're going to be doing a podcast soon called That's Adorable Canada, where we just talk, we really are going to just talk about Canada. And so he somehow secured the domain that'sadorable.ca.
All right.
So,
that's because Canadians don't know how adorable they are.
Yeah, and I was like, well, how can we talk about serious things that aren't adorable? And we're just gonna have a segment called "That's Not Adorable Canada."
Oh, very nice.
Yeah,
very
so
nice.
We'll talk about murders in that.
Then
section.
right.
Yeah.
Then you could talk about more serious things, and And we know this isn't adorable.
And I have a friend in Toronto who I terrify on Facebook because he's like, you literally know more about my town than I do.
Right, because you're listening to the local news.
Yeah, I listen to their local news, and I listen to like all sorts of CBC podcasts because, spoiler of what I do with podcasts, I feel bad every time I tell a podcaster this, but I basically ruin your podcast by putting it through an Audacity filter where it speeds it up, and then it takes out all the silence, and then it lowers the pitch so that it doesn't have that chipmunk voice, and I basically just listen to podcasts in half the amount of time. So,
wow.
I listen to a ton of podcasts.
What is the
per day.
effect that you are using on Audacity to do this?
I just lower the pitch like 50%, maybe.
And what does that do?
It makes it so you don't have the chipmunk voice.
Do we all have a chipmunk voice?
If you speed it up, double speed, which is what I do.
Oh, I see.
So I speed it up double speed, almost, and then I take out all the silence.
Wait, and this is the order in which you do it?
The order I take out the silence first.
Okay.
It speeds it up about 98%. And then after that, it lowers the pitch. And then it exports. And I do that, I run a chain, so I delete all the podcasts that are in iTunes, dump them in this file, run the chain, and then I re-import them in iTunes.
Right, and it takes an hour, and it makes an hour-long podcast into what?
Half an hour.
Half an hour, 40 minutes?
Less.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes?
Yeah, and the CBC podcasts are a lot shorter, so I can listen to like 20-minute one, like 10 minutes, 9 minutes.
Holy fuck.
So I listen to a ton of podcasts every day. I am such a dork. Like my dorkdoms have dorkdoms inside them. Like
you're like a Russian doll of dorkdoms. Wow. Okay.
So I listen to a lot of CBC stuff all over like their country. But
have you listened to the Dork Forest like that?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Do you have one that you would recommend people? Because I know people who are like, I don't have enough time to listen to podcasts. That's an excellent way to listen to podcasts.
Yeah, that's the only. I don't do that with like mine because I like to preserve like the ones I'm on for like file. But like I also started lowering the pitch
because then you delete them, right? I mean, you just listen to them and call it, right?
Yeah. And like I have like I keep the ones that I'm on. Also, I like the sound of my own voice. So
congratulations, well played.
But I also use my own voice as a benchmark to like lowering the pitch and making sure, because I think I was on one podcast where I finally just accidentally did that to it. And then I could tell, okay, maybe I could go a little bit lower on lowering the pitch and to get
so
accurate.
Right, because then it isn't, because it's speeded up, but everyone has a voice that's understandable.
It will just sound like you talking faster.
Oh, wow.
And then when you lower the pitch, it slows it a little bit, but it's...
Could you do that to the Aisha Tyler episode of the Dork Forest? Because we were talking so fast.
I did that to that episode of the pod.
And
speaking of that episode, she told me to tell you hello, because I met her, and I was like, I'm doing the Dork Forest too. I met her at Wix, and she was like, tell Jackie hello.
She's awesome. She's
awesome.
Yeah, I saw her at the LA Podcast Festival. She always entertains. She's always very busy, and I never know what she's doing until I watch television one day, and I'm like, oh, is she on The View?
She's on The Talk.
She's on The Talk, which is like The View,
but everyone has kids except for her.
Right.
And I told her, I was like, I call you the Black Nerd Whisperer, because her podcast, like the Wayne Brady episode of her podcast was amazing.
Right.
And, so I do that with everyone's podcast. I used to not be able to do it with the British ones, but now I can. Okay. I've learned to, like, listen.
Oh, to hear the accents, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever listen to The Bugle?
I have, yeah.
Which is the John, no?
Yeah, it's John Oliver.
John Oliver, that's it, yeah. It's his podcast. And, see, here's what I don't like to admit when I'm on podcasts, is that I never listen to podcasts.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. Most people who are on them don't.
When I listen to anything on audio, I listen to books on tape when I drive. And then I listen to, and then I just read when I'm not. I
read way, way, way faster than books on tape go.
Right.
So I used to check them out from the library and then do that with the CDs. But like with Audible, you can't. They have the,
oh no, they're locked.
They're locked.
You can't compress and lower.
I'm like, oh, this is gonna take too long. I'll just read the book.
Right.
So yeah, I only listen to podcasts, but I listen to a ton, like hundreds. I'm not kidding. On my iPod, I have hundreds.
Well, name 5 that you like that I don't know.
I love Slate's Hang Up and Listen. Which is their sports podcast, and they talk about like a lot of. They have a thing at the end of it where they talk about like weird kind of things like that are sports related, but like somebody wrote an opera about LeBron James leaving.
Oh, weird. Okay, so they're crossover-y.
Yeah, they're really crossover, and I normally hate Slate stuff because like Slate is just I don't even.
Is that the only podcast on Slate that you listen to?
I listen to Culture Gabfest just because I like to I'm not a cutter, so I like to torture myself by listening to it.
What is that?
It's their pop culture podcast, but they will make
So they're talking about the 22-year-old that is popular.
They were talking about
show?
Sarah Silverman last week. They were talking about her interview in the Wall Street Journal or something like that. She did an interview that was pretty serious.
Okay.
And they were talking about that, and they were talking about whenever they talk about anything related to comedy, you're just like, oh my god, really? Stop. And they just they're like the pretentious people who overanalyze stuff, and they're not fun.
Oh.
But I don't know. Sometimes I listen to that, but I always listen to Slate Hang Up and Listen. They're really smart. They're really fun.
Okay.
I listen to Aisha Tyler's Girl on Guy. I listen to every day Metro Morning Toronto. That's CBC, especially now with the Rob Ford stuff.
Right.
The
funniest tweet I saw, and damn it, I wish I could find his name who tweeted the damn thing because he's a comic, but he said, when did Toronto elect Baron Harkonnen as their mayor? Which is a Dune reference and is fucking hilarious, and I gotta find that and put it in the notes. Because that's the greatest...
Rob Ford is amazing. It's because they don't have a recall mechanism there. So they have nothing to do.
And the police can't arrest him because he hasn't gone in and turned himself in. He's just stated... Which,
they have the evidence. Now, they have the video that Gawker was looking for. They have enough evidence. It's imminent that they might arrest him. Well, we don't. That's the thing. They don't, because they don't know what they're going to do. But unless he gets arrested or dies, there's nothing. He's not stepping down. He said he's running again.
Right. They're not going to. Yeah. They. There's no city council that can eject him.
No,
what is it? They don't have an impeachment? They don't have an impeachment process?
They can't, but they have been stripping him of power, so now he's really mayor in name only, and it's kind of one of those things that, he's still there, and people still love him, because he's one of those people who'd be a good city councilor, because he gets stuff done, on the small scale, but in terms of, running a city, no.
Well, he's high.
Yeah, he's high, but, he's just a buffoon. He's a jerk. He's racist. He's homophobic. And,
Yeah, it sounds great. We should elect him president.
Yeah.
Sounds like a charmer.
We've already got Ted Cruz, so Canada can just... I will trade Ted Cruz for Rob Ford, actually, honestly, at this point.
Just because he's more personable?
I'd have a beer with him. He would have 15.
Oh, yes, he would. Though he said he stopped drinking.
For 3 weeks. He hasn't been drinking for 3 weeks. And his trainer, he has a trainer. His trainer has a Hotmail address, as I learned today, and that's probably not a good sign. I don't know. If you have a Hotmail address and you're a professional, you're a professional trainer training the fourth biggest city in North America. Just shell out for that domain name. Is
Toronto bigger than other cities in the United States?
Yeah.
What are the first three?
New York, LA,
Los Angeles,
Chicago.
Chicago's the third biggest city
I think it might be Chicago. I think the metro areas.
And Toronto is bigger than Montreal?
Oh, by far, yeah.
Okay.
Toronto is definitely by far the biggest city.
My knowledge of Canada, much less than almost everyone's.
Yeah.
And certainly that of Canadians.
Well, but I know a lot about local Canadian stuff. I knew more about their mayor situation than ours in Minneapolis at one point. I'm like, oh my gosh, it is ranked choice voting. Why?
So you don't know, do you listen to any daily Minneapolis podcasts?
Not really. I listen to local, but I read a lot of news stuff. But
online kind of just whatever's happening.
But NPR doesn't have a lot of news podcasts or anything like that. So I'm just
you a bit of a news junkie though?
Oh, a huge news junkie. I don't watch CNN or MSNBC.
That's because you're a news junkie.
Great. I watch BBC World.
Yeah, BBC World's great, right?
And it's hilarious because it's kind of terrible too in a way, but it's so much better than American.
Well, yeah, it's got more information than American.
But it's still, sometimes they'll just do stuff where you're the funniest thing they ever did is in Seattle, there was a guy who decided, there was a superhero epidemic, kind of people pretending to be superheroes. And one guy decided to claim he was a villain.
Yep.
And the BBC, without giving much context, and I'm glad my mom saw this too, because it was so crazy and I couldn't find the video of it.
Right.
They interviewed the villain, in the
supervillain.
They're on the phone, we have this supervillain. And then they had a conversation. If you just came in the middle, you'd be like, what? who are they interviewing? And he was just like, he was in character.
I'm a mad scientist. I don't think you understand.
Yeah, and the BBC was like, they're like, and what is your plan, villain? And there's,
Okay,
you're like, what?
so this was their human interest story?
Yes.
Wow.
But the great thing is the reporters there all know that they're just like, this is absurd. Until they hang up and they're just like, I can't believe we just did that. Like, there's one BBC reporter, I forget her name, but she's such a bitch to people sometimes. It's great. Like, there's one guy who is like, oh, I really like that. And she was like, you would. and he's like, don't you? And she's like, that's stupid.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I think her last name is like Chattopadhyay or something.
Okay.
But like, she's just, I watch that. I'm a huge news junkie, so I'll listen to a lot of news type things.
News podcasts where they go more into it? Kind of thing? Yeah.
Like local. And I also like to know, I don't travel a lot even. I just like to know what's going on in other cities. That's, I think that's another thing. I'm just fascinated about other places.
Yeah. So you're virtually traveling via the podcast world?
I've only gone to Canada abroad, but like I listen to a lot of stuff, and I haven't I just saw the Pacific Ocean in 2009.
Right.
And I saw the Atlantic in 2008, where they bundled me into a car, like, we gotta go, take her to the ocean. This is absurd. And so like I listen to WNYC in New York. I listen to Brian Lair and Leonard Lopate. But like my favorite podcast, like I said, Girl on Guy. I listen to yours a lot. I listen to Hang Up and Listen. What else do I always listen to?
Yeah, the ones that people really like are like Make It Weird and Nerdist and
I don't like a lot of comedy podcasts at this point because they're everywhere, and I'm around comics. I'm just like, and
it's a lot of crossover. A lot of the same people are on all the same.
And that's
podcasts.
why I like Dork Forest and like it's stuff too. Well, Girl and Guy I really like because she'll like talk about stuff that like I like as a black woman in comedy. That comes up a lot. It's great when she interviews another, and they're like, this shit you won't believe happened.
Right.
And I like yours because it's interesting people, but they're talking about something not comedy.
Right. And it's often comics, but it's not always stand-up. So.
Yeah, and I like, another podcast I like is Backstory. It used to be called American Backstory. It's called Backstory.
Okay.
And it's these history people, like, they're professors at, I think, UVA.
Okay.
And they'll pick a topic. They talk about time. They talk about a history of like the Postal Service.
There's a bunch of Smarty Pant podcasts.
Yeah,
out now.
and it's really interesting. Like they talked about the Mississippi River.
Right.
And they had one episode where they talked about steamboats. Or on this, there used to be a book called like Lloyd's Steamboat Directory. Yeah. And it would just be a chronicle of all these steamboat accidents. So it would be like... And the reason the steamboats would always blow up is because they would offer a lot of buffets and like all you could eat stuff. But the thing is with all you can eat, like you gotta get them off the boat or they'll eat all they can eat.
Yeah.
So they would always like race down the river and they'd like blow up because like they'd get overheated or they'd like run aground. And so, or else they'd have like drag races between the boats. And like at one point, 5% of the steamboats would just like blow up or sink. And this book, it's online called like Lloyd's Steamboat Directory, would just like list the accident. Would be like Phoenix, like ran aground, Phoenix 2, like sank. And it's just like a chronicle of all these accidents.
Stop naming your boats Phoenix.
Yeah.
In the hopes that they will rise from the ashes.
Yeah, they don't.
No.
Yeah, and they just talked about all sorts of stuff. They talked about, they had one on mental illness in America. They talked about how like, schizophrenia, when the original diagnosis, they came up with it after like imprisoning like people, like civil rights people. And so like they talked about just like a lot of the cultural stuff where, like they're like black people that aren't crazy, like, just like so much stuff would happen to them.
Yeah.
So you have to be sure that when you're talking to someone that maybe they are schizophrenic.
But maybe like, they are not.
Yeah, maybe they're not. And just a lot of like interesting, they're not at all political, but like a lot of good history.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fun.
And just social. And I was talking to Baron Vaughn a couple of months ago. And he was just talking, we were sharing, the tale of how when we were children, we weren't allowed to be mentally ill.
Yeah.
There was no money for it and there was no time for it. Yeah. So, please get your shit together. Yeah. Because, you have to let yourself into the house. Yeah. And, kill a couple of hours because I'll be home from work in a minute. Yeah. And, we don't have, keep it together. And it was very funny. And it's so interesting that the any sort of like, whether it's cultural or economic, where taking something like that, like a psychological problem or like a science test or any sort of thing like that, and then applying it to all women or all black people or all whatever. That's fascinating. There's the only other podcast I'd listen to regularly is the Tolkien Professor. But I've been on a lot of podcasts.
Yeah,
I was on the Star Wars Minute, which was they would take a minute of Star Wars. They've cut them into minutes, and then we would analyze each minute. And so they do, each guest does, and each day they talk about, it's every day, 5 days a week, and you get to do 5 minutes of Star Wars.
So are you analyzing it as though you've seen the whole movie, or are you just analyzing this 5 minutes, like, with no other context?
No, everyone's seen the movie a million times. You're just like, oh, I've never seen this minute, this much, this specific. And the minute that I did was when, was the each of the minutes, it was the minutes when Chewie is being walked down in handcuffs through the Death Star. And so there's the handcuff scene. There's Han and Chewie and Luke in the next minute. The first minute is them just walking down the hallway. The next minute is them only in the room where they're like, hey, we got a prisoner transfer. And then the next one is only Han Solo saying, no, everything's okay. No, everything's okay. And so it's the craziest ever. We did 5 of these, and it's the craziest 15 minutes you've ever heard in your life. Cause you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah. I love overanalyzing stuff like that. Like, as you know, we mentioned Heathcliff.
Yep.
Which I have a blog about, and I didn't want to talk about it that much because it's kind of hard to talk about a comic
Wuthering
strip.
Heights Heathcliff? Oh, there you
go. No, Heathcliff the cat. Because the comic strip is so insane. Like, I am not a huge fan of anti-comedy until I start reading Heathcliff comics, because you're just like, it's so nonsensical that it becomes the funniest thing you've ever seen. Like, the thing.
Give me one example, and then I have to tell you, and this is what always happens. We're at an hour.
Yeah. The one example is,
and I will have you back on just to talk about Heathcliff.
The one example is, that started the actual blog I have called Heathcliff for Why. OrangeCatAntics.wordpress.com.
Okay.
It's also linked to on House of Procrastination.
Okay, good.
But basically, this was the Sunday one, so it was multiple panels.
Sure. And in color.
Yeah, and the grandma comes in and she's like, Heathcliff, like, how are you feeling? And then Heathcliff is like, the next one is him pondering something. And then it cuts to, Heathcliff has a cabinet with the heads of other famous cartoon cats. Like, it's like Felix, Garfield, the Cat in the Hat, Hello Kitty, like Scratchy, or like Itchy and
Scratchy, yeah.
Like other cats. And then the next scene is Heathcliff is wearing the Felix hat, and the grandma's like, he's feeling Felix. And
that's the whole comic strip?
Yes. And so there's just like
I don't know that I've ever appreciated, much like Sesame Street.
Yeah, but there's just one, but usually it's just one panel. Like, there's one where Heathcliff is flying a flag and it just says cake on it, and the grandma's like, he really likes cake. Like, they just explain the bizarre stuff the cat does. Yeah, there's one.
That's it.
He
That's
walks
the
into a
whole
meat
thing.
store. He walks into a butcher shop, or it's like a deli, I think, and it just says the thing, like the butcher says to his coworker, he's like, a meat storm is coming. And then, that's it. It's the greatest comic ever.
Your enjoyment is the greatest thing ever.
It's so... I got other people, like Pat Sussmelt, who's a comic, is obsessed with it now. Like, people on Facebook now, like James Ward, who's another comic.
They know that you know.
I post the comic, and then everybody analyzes it. We're like, what is this? And
right.
there was one that it literally took 4 comics to figure out what was going on. And it was...
Where the anti-comedy was coming from.
We didn't even get it. Like, we're just like, wait, what? Like,
yeah.
Is that a joke, or like...
Okay, so, procrastinating.org.
House of Procrastination.org.
Yes. And then, and the name of your podcast again is Bill and Brandi? Brandi and Bill.
Brandi and Bill talk about blaxploitation, and the website for that is blaxploitationpodcast.com. Pretty easy.
Pretty easy. And I will link it on the notes. Ladies and gentlemen, Rangers of the Dork Forest, you've chosen wisely. Again, take care of each other out there. Bye. Well, that show was awesome. Let's do the credits. Patrick Brady, he fixes the audio every week. He also does the teaser videos on YouTube. So Patrick Brady is an awesome guy, and I thank him for his work. Mike Rickberg sang the song you heard at the beginning, composed and sang it with his girlfriend Sarah. He's going to sing in about a heartbeat for the Mexican hat dance. And Vilmos fixes my website, JackieCation.com. So support him and his work. Thanks a lot, you guys. Take care out there. Bye.
My hat, my hat, my hat. They're dancing around my hat. My hat, my hat, my hat. Well, what do you think of that? If it looks like a Mexican hat dance and it sounds like a Mexican hat dance, it's most likely a Mexican hat dance. So take off your hat and let's dance.
Yay! Oh my God. Why don't we just call that as the end of the show?